What's going on, workforce? Brian here, and in today's video we're breaking down Final Fantasy XIV's problem with progression. And essentially, really this is more an idea or a video focusing in on a few ideas that I have to hopefully improve the situation. Link is in the description below, and maybe I'll throw it up here as well, for a thread that is posted up on the official forums. The idea is to inform the devs of some ideas that we have, some interesting thoughts that we have. And after engaging with several people in the community, talking about various ideas that we had, I kind of wanted to put together this post and this video to share this with you guys, because at the end of it, as it all boils down into when we talk about the state of Final Fantasy XIV, as we go into 5.0, as we look at ways to make the game better and to provide feedback that the devs can either, they don't have to do these ideas. And also at the same time, just because these are my ideas doesn't mean that they're the right ideas. That's also a part of this, is that I want to engage in discussion with you guys about what you think as well, sharing my own thoughts, listening to yours, and then obviously doing this up with a community feedback at some point to hopefully allow the best ideas that we have as a community to reach the developers' ears. And I hope that I can actually be able to sit down with Yoshi P at FanFest and kind of share these ideas with him face to face or within the big group like we did last year, or last FanFest 2 years ago now. So with that, there's a couple of key points before we actually get into the core idea. And you have the kind of the problem, you've got the challenge that, by introducing new progression systems, what that actually could mean for the game. And then you have like various possible solutions with that. And so obviously the problem that I speak of is, as we are in 4.0, as we go into 5.0, we've had the same progression system for gear since 2.0. With respect of, we've obviously got Palace of the Dead, and now we have Eureka, and those systems, outside of the fact that they can feed you tomestones, which feed into just the main core concept of the gear grind, obviously relative, the Savage mode and stuff like that. But outside of that, that all kind of feeds into the same system, and they don't necessarily talk to one another. And so I want to kind of address that at its core. The other piece of that is that once you hit level cap, like XP, and any XP relative activity, it becomes completely pointless. And XP can always be a good source of that. We used to actually have that system where XP was still relevant at level cap with the spirit bonding system. And sometimes you might have, if you're new to the game and you're like, well, it tells me that I've spirit bonded with this gear. What does that mean? And it means you can convert that gear into Matera with certain, exceptions to it. The way they throw Matera at us right now, it's preferred. I think it encourages more that Matera market. It encourages more playing around with various stats. So I'm happy with the changes they made, but the Spirit Bond system still exists, but it's become like this just archaic system that really doesn't add value. You're not going out and hunting for XP just so you can fill up your Spirit Bond gear. The other part of that is obviously anytime you complete a challenge log at level cap and it's like 0 XP, you're like, could it be something else? Anyway, the challenge here, so that's kind of the problem. The challenge here is that we don't want to incentivize or create a system that makes people feel like they can't take a break. We already have a system like that. It's called housing, and it does make people feel like they cannot unsub, they cannot walk away from the game. And so we don't want to introduce so many systems like that to where you feel trapped and unable to step away, because sometimes taking a break is important, as several people have pointed out to me in other videos. So it is, we don't want to essentially incentivize that. We also don't want to break the game from a battle content perspective. We don't want to sit here and say, listen, unless you've, played 1,000 hours and you've reached theoretical level 1,000 of your E level, whatever we want to call it, you can't go run the Savage content. And so essentially we want to make sure we encourage people to play the game in a healthy way with respect to the way that it's currently played. The 450 Genesis tome cap that's current as of this game, but it's pretty much standard, the 450, is a way to kind of help players step away or participate in other activities in the game or playing other games. So with respect to that, like from a game design perspective, we want to not incentivize people having to live in this game, to have to take time off work, to quit their jobs, just so they feel like they can keep up with some measurable level of success outside of the standard 450 gear tome grind. And so possible solutions. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of this. Again, please check the thread on the official forums. add your ideas either in the comments below here or on the official forums post. My hope is that we can, again, take this to the devs and make it something, bigger than just one person and one community on YouTube or in the Final Fantasy world as a whole. So with that, with some possible solutions, we got to make XP relevant again. Destiny 2 actually handles this very well. With Destiny 2, whenever you hit level cap, whenever you get a level's worth of XP, you get just basically we'll call it a treasure coffer. Loot box is also thrown around. Loot box has a negative connotation, so don't think or listen to loot box as a way of progressing randomly. It's not a way of progression. It's just it's a thank you. It could just include fireworks, and then you could be like, what the crap is all of this? And so ideally it could just contain any number of random things, and it could it literally would just be thank you for continuing to play. You've gotten a whole level's worth of XP. Here's a nice little box that you can open, and who knows what's inside, much like you see right now already within Eureka and within the Palace of the Dead, just bringing that into the end of the core crux of the game. Having XP worthwhile, having it, gives the player, saying, man, I'm almost close to level. There's a fate over there, and I'm going to open the world. Fates become completely useless at level cap because they only really reward XP and maybe a little bit of a free company or a grand company, seals, which really aren't that valuable once you've reached and attained a certain position within it. So it kind of as you play the game longer, this probably is going to make a little bit more sense to you. Then, so actually that's I think one simple way. We've talked about it a little bit before, but I think that would be a huge, just a nicety, a nice quality of life feature, and then also maybe just have some kind of theoretical number of how many times, you've hit level cap, and then every level after that can always get either reset or, they could always do something with each expansion. That is not necessarily the point of this video, but we can talk about it later. Otherwise, another big, system change that I would like to personally see, and I know this might cause a little bit of controversy, so stick with me real quick, is the merit point system needs to come back. If you're not aware what a merit point is, this is kind of a system from Final Fantasy XI. It allowed you that once you kind of hit level cap, which at the time was 75, it's now 99, you could switch over into merit point leveling. And with that merit point level, you got a point, and then you could use it for various stats or kind of abilities or just in cooldowns. In this case, for Final Fantasy XIV, I want none of that. I think the merit points as a core makes sense. But at the root of it, it should not impact your battle. It should not have any impact on what kind of content you can get into. And so with those two parameters in mind, and also respect to make sure that people feel like they don't have to live in this game just to try to keep up with the content, that it applies. The only real ways to go forward would be with quality of life adjustments and or glamour. Things that you could use those points to spend them on, whatever you want. Now, obviously, there would be some hard caps. This isn't a endless progression system at all, because at some point you have to cap it. Because examples here would be reducing teleportation cost to any specific aetheryte by 1%. We're just going to make up some percentage numbers here, but let's say 1%. Obviously, you put a cap on that. You don't want to make it to where somebody could grind and never have a teleport fee whatsoever. So let's say you set hard caps of 25% reduction. But to do that, you would need to buy aetheryte, which as they expand aetherytes, this is a forever progression expansion system. That's a 1% cost. You can do up to 25 per aetheryte times the number of aetherytes. That's how many merit points you would need to acquire to be able to reduce that. And then as they add in new aetherytes, because as the game expands, that's more things that you could go use those points on. Movement speeds per zone, both for yourself and for mounts outside of battle, would be an interesting way. Now we have the mount movement speed increase, which is just kind of a static level 1 and then 2, and that's all done via the clan hunts. But tying it into progression, tying it into the level, doing that whole 1% per zone gives you a thing that it's okay, I can take that merit point and I can use that, and this is going to be the benefit that I immediately receive, and it has some kind of theoretical cap on it that you can then play around with. The other one that I really like is we have all these currencies that sit at cap. I'm capped right now at 2,000 Stones of Poetics, and that has not changed forever. Would it be cool if that one merit point you could use could increase that theoretical cap by 10 for each merit point? Same thing kind of goes for sprint cooldown reduction outside of battle. Right now it's okay, you got a cooldown on sprint. It'd be cool if you could reduce that cooldown for sprint via this type of system using a merit point to reduce it, 1% or whatever that value ends up being up to a theoretical cap. Same thing for the length in which sprint can be used within a specific, outside of battle mode, and also outside of any instance content. Movement speed would not be able to be impacted in instance content. Sprint cooldown would not be able to be impacted via instance content. And so those are just some of those rooted ideas. So we talked about teleports, we talked about zones, we talked about obviously like mount speed, movement speed, and then there could be endless number of quality of life adjustments. And that's actually what I'm interested in kind of hearing what you guys would think would be an interesting quality of life adjustment. The thing for me, I think I would focus on personally would be the currency cap. It wouldn't impact your weekly cap for the current tombstone, but the amount of tombstones that you could end up carrying and acquiring over time if you put the effort and if it was even interesting to you. And obviously probably some form of theoretical cap in which that somebody could literally carry millions of those tombstones around, because at some point you do convert up with various things, and it would also help manage and make it easier for all that. But anyway, I'm also like stuck on 2,000 seals within PvP, and that's just sitting there, 20,000 excuse me, and it would be really cool to be like, yep, let me go ahead and collect more, because they haven't really released any, gear outside of the seasonal gear for me to purchase. And if they have, I haven't been to the shop. Maybe I should go check it out. Finally, the last piece of kind of that would be kind of almost like a merit point shop, in which you would have glamours, mounts, minions, all kinds of little things that you could use those merit points on. Obviously, if somebody wanted to do that. The goal is to give the player, not necessarily stress, but a concept where they have a difficult decision to make. Is it that they want to save it for maybe like a special mount or a special minion? And I think honestly those things would be really cool if they were tradable, allowing the player to earn and sell and trade, and thus have a kind of an influx of gil for players who might not necessarily want or need to grind up so many merit points. Again, reducing stress or the feel that they would have to do that, because then the player can choose like, hey, what's more important to me? Is it more important to reduce that teleport cost here? Is it more important for that? Obviously, this would have to be balanced in respect to the core crux of the system. Otherwise, you could easily go and create a system that creates a lot of stress and it's not a lot of fun. But at its root, as I chewed on this idea, as I kind of meditated on this idea before posting it on the official forums and then sitting down and talking to you guys about it, is that there is a sense of fun, there is a sense of choice, there's a sense of kind of an illusion of player-driven choice that is not going to impact everybody's individual performance in battle, but there are thousands of things that we can impact in the game to make our investment in it, like it's kind of a long-term investment. I know I'm going to be going to that Aetheryte a lot. Might as well just naturally reduce my cost. You can even go to an nth degree in saying that I want to incentivize the amount of rested XP that I can hold for any specific amount of time. There's a lot that we can do here, and I'd love to know your thoughts. So sound off in the comments below. But we have two final thoughts here, and I know this video is getting a little bit long, and I do apologize for that. One thought is, and I go back and forth on this, so this is a little bit more controversial at its root. At the principled fact of it is that without the ability to have varying traits and have gear be unique in a way that it would make sense to that certain piece of gear would offer different benefits to the job that the gear is equipping. As that at your core, you have a gear system that is very static. It is very mundane, because gear outside of stats has very little influence, and thus it's just something that is going to be grinded up, and that's why glamour has become so important. And I'm not knocking glamour here, but what I'm trying to get to, the point that I'm trying to make, is that gear should have unique traits that make that gear special. If you do that kind of system, you need a way that that gear can level up, because unless you're going to be able to take that trait and apply and take it and put it on something else, aka what glamour does is it takes your gear and it makes it look like something else. If you're not able to take that trait and move it along, you're going to end up making that gear feel required, and at the same time not then obviously obsolete. So I would think that there'd be some way that that gear itself that you earn, that you spend a lot of time earning, would be able to be leveled up, to be kind of infused, to be able to be upgraded, to be able to take XP and be able to take tomes, and all of a sudden you have a process in which that piece of 350 gear can become 360, can become 370 in relation to the pace in which that gear could be acquired at the 370 level. Thus, you would end up having a larger pool a potential gear that is level cap gear, and then you could build out different builds. Again, this is really controversial because from a balancing perspective, it's not easy. And this request right here, I know is probably the hardest request that I'm making of the developers, but a way that would make you essentially feel more invested in acquiring that gear. The breaking of this here, you know, the breaking principle to the core root of the video is that it could make people feel stressed because they are literally having to go and farm up this specific piece of gear to level that specific piece of gear to be optimal. And so I definitely have hesitation with that request. I definitely worry about that specific request as it relates to the whole. But I say that and I bring that to you guys not because I know it's an easy ask, but because I hope that the devs are encouraged to take risks and not always do the easy thing, to create a system for us that is worthwhile to our time, our effort, our energy, our passion, and that's kind of what that boils down to. Finally, and a final thought, as we wrap up, is that I really want to encourage the game to really allow for different progression systems to communicate to one another. I kind of speak of Eureka. I look at Eureka and how it's off there. You can only do it over there. Heaven on High is over here. They feed into the gear progression system kind of almost like a form of a triangle. So it's like, here's the main, the top pinnacle is the main point of progression. Then you have these offshoots that have their own progression systems that point to the main, but they're really not connected at the bottom. They really don't communicate well. One idea was brought actually by Chili over from the Phoenix Down radio podcast about leveraging the power of Wondrous Tales to be able to apply like kind of a bonus or a reward in Eureka or Heaven on High and that kind of content. So that way the systems themselves communicate together from a core progression based system. I don't know I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you what numbers that should be, because essentially it runs the risk of creating a system that de-incentivizes you to even do that content. Eureka being a hotbed topic where people feel like it automatically de-incentivizes you, while there are people who definitely enjoy that style content. I've spoken about it. We've talked about it in different videos. I actually want like 2 changes would make that content perfect. Make it open world, give it a level sync. Cool. Let's, I have fun. I would like to do that because I feel like it gives me something to do while I wait for something to do, aka a queue system. Anyway, but I would love to see, some kind of currency conversion, some kind of way that these systems in this theme park communicate to one another, so that as a player, you're always making progression. You're never having to make a choice between A, B, and C. That you can make the choice and you'll progress faster in A, but there's a little bit of B and C, kind of coming up as well. Or you focus in on B, and while B is definitely progressing further, there's a little bit of A and B, and it feels like some of these dots have not yet been fully connected. But hopefully we're going to see that as we go into 5.0. That's the video. This is the ideas. The big part of this is, if you guys agree with this, if you like this, if you think this idea has merit, click on the link below. Go update the official forms. Hit the like button on the page. Comment on it. Keep this part of the conversation rolling. If you're a part of our Discord community, we actually have a specific text channel where I'm posting these ideas. But these aren't just supposed to be about my ideas. I want to know your ideas and what you're passionate about and what you think would help make the game better, so that as a community, we can rally around together and we can hopefully help articulate the change that we think would benefit everybody. Not just me, not just Brian from Work to Game, but everybody, both in the Work to Game community and the greater Final Fantasy community as a whole. Anyway, guys, for Work to Game, thanks so much for watching this video. My name is Brian. That's out of order. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Hey, buddy. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You. Yes. You on YouTube. You. Look into my eye. Look into the feasting eye of Charles Gubu, a.k.a. Chuck. Listen, I totally know you want to hit that subscribe button. It's really important you do. Trust me, it's worth it. It's worth it. The eyes don't lie. Okay. All right. Good talk. Good talk. Oh, and thanks to our patrons. You guys are amazing. Gubu, Chubu, out.